Andrew Tate, How He Seduced, Part 3. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, continuing to use the material provided by Vice News for the purpose of explaining how this was narcissism in action. While Tate used Tinder to try to recruit Lisa, it was not the only platform there's evidence of him using. A British woman told BBC News she was manipulated into cam work by Tate after he approached her out of the blue on Facebook, use of a hunting ground, lack of boundary recognition, approaching stranger, and they struck up a relationship. The woman's account bears close resemblance to Lisa's story, except that she took him up on his invitation to visit him in Bucharest and start working for him. This is the individual that talked about how Tate was coercive and violent, which I have covered in parts passing of this series about Andrew Tate involving the ex-girlfriend speaking out against him. Another British woman, whom Vice World News has previously reported as having been exploited by Tate, said he groomed her into cam work after they met on Facebook, use of hunting ground, although her method of recruitment differed from Tate's apparent standard modus operandi in that she was put in touch with him via a mutual Facebook friend who claimed Tate wanted to speak with her. But it was the photo-sharing platform Instagram that Tate considered the perfect app for his methods, use of social media as a hunting ground. In his PhD course, Tate sings the photo-sharing app's praises, recommending it to his followers as your number one tool to get laid. While he conceded he had found good girls on Tinder, he claimed the problem with the dating app was that every girl on Tinder has fucked someone else, belittlement, and that only real ratchet ass hoes are left on there, insult, smearing. The reason Instagram was so fantastic, he said in the course video, was that women on Instagram sit there all fucking day. The only real drawback of the app, he said, was that women users were already deluged with DMs from random men. To overcome this, Tate gave his followers a recommended opening line intended to generate intrigue and spark interaction through their mass cold calling. Essentially, use of vagueness and promised gain, i.e. the provision of information, to draw attention to this particular approach of hoovering. The cold opener entailed simply stating the city of the woman being targeted, followed by a question mark, often adding a completely pointless emoji on the end, some cherries or an orange or a strawberry, according to Tate. Not particularly sophisticated, but invariably be effective, because it would cause people to wonder why you're doing that, and at least ask, and therefore there's the opportunity to huck them in and start a conversation with them. So the girl sitting there, she's scrolling through, how are you, you're sexy, how are you, you're sexy, Bucharest strawberry, Tate explained in the course. Then they start to think, why does he want to know where I am? Like, does he want to fuck me? Does he see me? Does he have something of interest for me? And they usually reply, yeah, why? Because they're interested. I've explained before that when I engage in a foray of talking to women through social media and various apps, the fact that I was able to string a sentence together and come up with interesting observations about them and raise interesting queries set me way apart from all the thickos and dullards that operated in there. The use of it shows just how useless many of the individuals are, that simply mentioning a place and a fruit still causes you to stand out from those other individuals. Daria Gusa was just 16 when she received an unsolicited, lack of boundary recognition, direct message, hoovering, from Andrew Tate on her Instagram account. The message on July the 4th, 2020, a screenshot of which she shared with Vice World News, read simply, Romanian girl, followed by the strawberry emoji. Gusa, a Romanian student who is now 19, studying at a UK university, was wary of the approach, feeling it was creepy that a man in his 30s with a huge social media following would be messaging a high school student. This shows lack of awareness, also absence of emotional empathy. It was a very obvious thing, she told Vice World News during a Zoom call. I had my high school in my bio, for God's sake. I only had like 200 followers, and they were all high school students. I can say there's not any man with 2 brain cells in the world who could have thought, oh, nice, a 25-year-old. I was like, this is creepy, definitely something going on. Guzar's suspicions deepened when she found out, shortly afterwards, that 3 of her high school friends in the county north of the Romanian capital Bucharest had also been messaged by Tate around the same time, receiving almost identical short cryptic messages. I think he just changed the emojis, Guzar said. This, of course, is demonstrative of the low-level approach of Tate, commensurate with his upper lesser status. But, of course, it pays dividends for him. Basically, throw enough fish hooks in the water and someone will bite. One of the girls was in her grade at school, while the other 2 were in the grade below. Guzar said that she was already wary of such advances because there was widespread awareness of the threat of loverboy grooming in Romania, which is a major target for human traffickers. Uncaged, an anti-trafficking charity, said that the loverboy method is the single most common method for enslaving Romanian women. The Romanian government has even distributed posters in schools to raise awareness of loverboy grooming. Nevertheless, 2 of her 3 friends responded to Tate and ended up having online conversations with him. Guzar said that her family connections, her father, Cosmin Guzar, is a high-profile political analyst and former politician in Romania, made her feel like she had the support network to speak up about being targeted by Tate. But her friends didn't feel able to do so, fearing being mobbed online by Tate's armies of supporters, coterie, as others who have made accusations against him have done. Intimidation, fear. Guzar's friends showed her the messages they had exchanged with Tate at the time, in online conversations, that had followed a similar pattern. She said, initially he complimented their looks, telling them they were beautiful, flattery, then asked them if they wanted to meet up, promising to take them to a particular restaurant or pick them up in a fancy car, promised gain. When they stopped replying because they didn't want to meet him, Guzar said, Tate responded with abusive messages insulting them. Response to wounding ignited fury. Guzar is relieved that neither she nor her friends met up with Tate and has sympathy for the women who were allegedly manipulated into his orbit through his loverboy technique. She believes Tate was clearly using social media to trawl for young, naive-looking girls who will be easier to manipulate and groom into his webcam industry. That's an age where girls feel the most insecure and they're most excited to get any attention. Use of vulnerability against the victim. The fact that he specifically stated that he manipulates young women into sex work, I think that's a problem. Tate has repeatedly spoken publicly about his preference for younger women, including telling Vice World News in 2022 that he considers them less jaded, less upset, less suspicious than older women, specific targeting of victims. Women who have publicly spoken out about Tate have faced huge blowback from his fanatical army of online supporters, and Guzar is no exception. Since speaking to reporters about her brush with Tate, she said she has been deluged with abuse, calling her a liar or warning her to back off. Assertion of control by proxy, use of coterie. I get, you're a liar, or you're such a slut, you had Instagram at 16, it's your fault. She said others have messaged her with details of her current whereabouts and threatened her saying, Daddy isn't here to protect you. Vice World News reached out to Tinder and Instagram for a response on how Tate used their platforms in his efforts to groom women, and how the platforms could potentially be used in other trafficking attempts. Tinder did not comment directly on users' experiences, but said through a spokesperson that the platform had a zero-tolerance policy for any type of illegal activity, including grooming. Tinder constantly invests in ways to protect members, including a robust suite of safety features, in-app education and detection technology. We also work directly with law enforcement when needed. A spokesperson for Meta, the company that owns Instagram, said Tate had been banned from the platform in August when he was kicked off a number of major social media platforms for breaching policies forbidding gender-based hate. We have a range of features in place to protect women and girls from unwanted contact. Anyone can troll who can send them DM requests, and adults can't start DM chats with under 18s who don't follow them, said the spokesperson. We use technology to find potentially suspicious adults and automatically prevent them from finding, following, and interacting with teen accounts. We've also worked with women's safety experts to develop rules designed to address harms that disproportionately affect women, for example, sexualized or misogynistic language, threats of sexual violence, and the sharing of non-consensual intimate imagery. Lisa looks back on her brush with Tate with bemusement. She feels embarrassed to have dated a man with such toxic attitudes towards women, and slightly worried that few people that knew of their connection might mistakenly think that she was caught up in his seedy business. Because she figured out pretty early on that Tate was trying to recruit her, it's likely that Lisa is a normal and therefore doesn't have the addiction to the narcissist that would cloud her thinking through emotional thinking. She doesn't believe she would have succumbed to his grooming attempts. But given the apparent scale of the mass recruiting technique, she says she's certain that some other more vulnerable women will have. I'm just pleased I never flew out there to stay with him, Lisa says. I think you would be made to feel isolated and controlled. Correct. While the alleged extent of Tate's exploitation of women and the radically misogynistic public persona he had cultivated was shocking, she wasn't surprised by any of it, given the deep insecurities he'd shown glimpses of during the time they were in contact. He wants to be seen as superior and manly, and if you don't think he's the top, then he doesn't want anything to do with you. That's because that will wound him, and that's his nullification of the threat to control. He talks about women like they're crap. Grandiosity, sense of entitlement, and haughtiness. And there you have a breakdown of the techniques, not the most sophisticated, but nevertheless a useful insight into the way that the upper lesser type B behaves towards people, namely women, for the purposes of recruitment. It's also, of course, instructive that throughout this detailed article, which involves the victims, Vice News, Meta, and Tinder, not once is narcissism mentioned, whereby, of course, all those individuals, if they understood that this was narcissism at work, would have a better understanding of what could be done. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.